Alrighty, well, welcome everyone to today's webinar, Improve Your Budgeting and Forecasting. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us today. There are a couple of housekeeping items we'd like to mention before we begin the presentation. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please either raise your hand and we can unmute you, or you can submit them through the GoToWebinar question box. We will answer questions throughout the presentation and we'll also follow up after the presentation to answer any additional questions. I'd like to introduce today's speakers. We have Terry Ginley, our Director of Analytics, and Judson Parsons, who is our CPM Solutions Architect here at Socius. So at this point, Terry, I believe we're ready to transition over to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Just want to do a quick audio check if you can hear me okay.
Yep, you're good.
Sounds good. Well, thank you everyone for joining our session today. We're going to talk a little bit about corporate performance management, budgeting, forecasting. We're going to go through some different areas. So here's our agenda. We'll do a little vocabulary assignment to, there's a lot of acronyms out there for this space and industry. So we'll kind of go through that area. We'll talk about some common myths of budgeting and forecasting, as well as defining some of the problems that our clients run into and how we solve them. We'll talk about some of the solutions that are available from Socius, as well as show one of the solutions with Judson, who's on the call as well. And we'll wrap up with some time for questions at the end. So the Socius view of analytics and corporate performance management, really we look at it and say it's a lot more than reporting. We've been doing reporting, in systems for 10, 20 years, very, very commonplace. It's still very required. But with today's tools, you can be a lot more analytical than just static month-end reports. Nice thing about some of the tools, we actually can start looking forward instead of always looking in the rearview mirror. We think that's important as you look to navigate and compete in your businesses today. We're trying to help our clients get to the mindset of a learning organization. We think that's important, that you learn something this week, and 2 months from now it could be completely different. How do you change your analytics to help you learn the next challenge? We also believe that we need to have actionable data, not reactive, but basically we're saying, hey, in this area or this region, maybe we should open up a new stores that would make sense. And does that market support it? Does the history support it? Do we think that we can actually grow in those areas? It needs to be self-service. The tools need to be not IT solutions, but for business users. We think that's very important. And then mobile and the right time and the right place. I always say that I've done a lot of financial statements over the year. No one wants to see financial statements on an iPhone, but they might want to see key pieces of information when certain debt covenants go below certain thresholds. They might want to be alerted on a mobile device. So quick vocabulary area. I'm just going to leave it up here on the screen and just talk to a few of them. Obviously, a lot of people do budgeting today. A lot of it's done in Excel. We'll talk about how you can expand and go beyond Excel. Some of the forecasting, where we can actually say where we want to go, where we head with, combined with where we're actually heading. So we'll talk about the end here, how clients reforecast, whether once a year, twice a year, every 12 months. Some of our clients. Acronyms that are out there, I'll just hit on a couple of them here. Corporate performance management. Think of that as budgeting, forecasting, financial analytics, and bring in a little bit of your operational data. Very similar to BPM, can be used interchangeably sometimes. And you're seeing a lot in organizations the title of FP&A, whether it's manager of FP&A, director in FP&A, is really getting a lot of traction in the industry. So when you hear that, really you're thinking of the CPM solutions we're going to look at here. And the last one I'll talk about is ETL. You hear people talk about how do you extract the data from your ERP, transform it, and load it into one of these solutions. So those are some of the key ones that we wanted to highlight before we jumped into our presentation. So common myths of budgeting. I promise that's not Lindsay on the picture on the right over there, but this is one of someone obviously who's had some challenges with the budgeting cycle. Basically, the common myths we joke around, people love the budgeting process, especially operational people that really would rather be out there doing their jobs and looking at spreadsheets. This is actually the next one down, Excel. We'll support a 155 tab model. I had a client show that to me once. I'm surprised it ran fairly slowly, but so it was kind of interesting. How do you keep track of that kind of data? The next area, I know users have never had this problem before, where people insert rows and columns and don't tell you about it. And then you try to do some summarizations, and obviously numbers and nice little graphic signs go all over the place. And then when you try to, in a process where you're trying to wrap up your budgeting process, where you're looking at different threads of emails, it can be from different groups of people, that's really not an effective workflow. And then for folks that have worked with some of the legacy budgeting applications that have been out there, the joke is that they're real simple to use. I mean, you really had to be a programmer in many ways just to get ad hoc reports and queries. And Judson will show us today how that's changed. So I don't want to pick on Excel here because I love Excel. Everybody uses Excel. I'm an accountant by nature, and Excel just fits my eye. But some of the problems you have is consolidating with Excel. I like Excel for doing ad hoc reporting, one-offs, what-ifs, and you can use Excel with these budgeting tools, but it needs to have its right place. Some of the other problems that we run into, who's making the changes. So you'll see here, I believe Judson will show where I can actually go in there and show who made the change at this time to this budget item, why did they make the change, and maybe even leave a little note going forward. It feeds into the next item. Standalone Excel won't give you the details. Why did somebody change it? You might be able to put a note there, but those little notes kind of get stuck in that one spreadsheet. They don't roll up, they don't summarize. And really what some of the problems run is ownership of the business units. So we want business leaders owning their budget, planning their budgets, not just having to sit down with the accounting team and being given their budget, or vice versa, fighting their budget. We really want them to have real-time analysis for them building and owning the budget. And like we talked about earlier, we want the numbers to speak for themselves. Today they don't in many cases. Who made the change? Why are they that way? Those are some of the common problems that we run into with the solutions we've provided to our clients. So what we're really trying to also do is help the role of the accounting CFO function in your organization really go from the first one I'll highlight here, where you're really looking at transaction management. You're really trying to be just get the numbers right, get them in there, get them closed within X number of days, get the budget done for the end of the year. So going really from this level, so really where we're trying to improve the process with the people and the data. So really we're trying to get to the next level where there's really data-driven decisions, where basically they're able to go in there and look at what's the reforecasting look like? What's the history look like? How do we compare that? Where do we think we're going? And then really trying to get to the upper left or upper right quadrant here, we're really trying to get to be a strategic, a change agent in the organization. So we're flagging, inefficiencies in the manufacturing process. Maybe it's by just these two product lines, but not these. Having tools that you can actually slice across those silos of data, we think is very important as you increase the role of you and your organization in your business. So some of the available solutions that we have today, we'll kind of give a quick overview on, and then we'll show one of them. So we'll go through some of the ways you can do budgets today. Obviously, there's Excel that's not on this list. I mean, that's probably what 80%, 90% of our clients use today. But as you grow, there's different ways. These are kind of in a stepping stone order, where basically you can store your budgets not just in Excel, but if you have them, you can actually pull them back into your ERP system. So whether you're running a dynamic solution, Sage, whatever the ones, NetSuite, a whole host of ones that we work with today, you can pull those back in and then let the financial reporting tools go ahead and report on it. And again, that's kind of first step, but still Excel is powering those budgets. There is, for our Dynamics clients, there's a Dynamics Forecaster. We'll talk about that. That's a budgeting CPM solution that they acquired about 15 years ago. So some Dynamics customers still have that. We'll talk to it for just a moment. We'll talk about Adaptive Insights, BI 360, and De facto Global, three of our strong partners that we like to work with. And over the last 2 years, we've implemented a little over 20 of the solutions across those three solutions today. So getting the data in from into your ERP from budgets, So think of it literally, it's just an import from an Excel file. Literally it's almost doing it like you see here at a trial balance level, an account level, getting it in here. Then reporting tools like Management Reporter or FRX can go ahead and do comparisons, simple comparisons, maybe just this year to actual, the budget to last year's. So you can do kind of analysis like you see here. We'll talk a little bit about Dynamics Forecaster. Last year, Microsoft announced that there was going to be an end of life to the Forecaster solution. That's why we've been really doing a lot of these webinars. If you are using the solution, it's not that you have to discontinue using it. It'll only be supported with versions of less than GP 2016. And again, we don't want you to stay on an old version of software that's not giving you new features. So that's one of our concerns. But also the Forecaster will be supported with the current GP versions through roughly 2021. So Forecaster was a good solution at its time, but getting a little dated and not supported. That's why we've really been working with clients to give them options for next solutions. So one thing we'll talk about is Adaptive Insights. It's a 100% cloud solution of budgeting and planning. And really what it does, it brings end-to-end corporate performance management. And you can see, as all three of these solutions do, they handle not just the financial reporting, budgeting, we're doing reforecasting. If you have some consolidations with multi-company and multi-currency, all of these solutions handle these functionalities very well. The nice thing about Adaptive is a real strong one version of the truth. It's integrated with multiple data sources, but literally Adaptive sitting in the middle, validating those data sources and making sure that they're accurate. Has some real strong what-if analysis that I really like, very quick and easy to do. You can create one model today, and in 15 minutes you can have a whole new model that you can basically, without changing your initial model. They also have, they can increase collaboration with the integrated dashboards. I believe Judson's going to show some of those here today, and similar across all three of the solutions. So next solution is BI 360 from Solver. As with the other solution mentioned earlier, it is reporting, budgeting, and a dashboarding solution. Also, the nice thing that it has, a little slightly different, it has basically a direct link to your ERP, to the GL and the subledger, so very instant access to that data. It's an Excel-based reporting tool. Some people love Excel-based, it's not going away. Some people like a more grid-like, like Adaptive. So really, we can help you understand what fits your organization better. It's fully integrated dashboards, basically are available anytime, anywhere, access to that data. And also one of the strengths of Solver and the BI 360 solution is the pre-configured data warehouse. It pulls the budget and the forecast data in, but if you want to pull in, I'm thinking of one of our clients is a trucking company that does logistics data, and they bring in a lot of, how many miles are driven, loads delivered, pounds hauled, and they can do that and actually do some of their forecasting for their solution going forward. And the third one I'll talk about here is De Facto. De Facto is a very strong solution, very powerful. Can do the things we talked about, doing consolidation analysis, but also can do some predictive analytics that they've worked with Microsoft on. Data entry and the analysis is all in Excel. Their dashboards, I didn't mention it here in the bullet point, their dashboards are done in Power BI, which is one of Microsoft's current generation and future generation dashboarding and analytics tool that they work with. They also partnered, like I mentioned earlier, with developing part of advanced Cortana analytics, some predictive capabilities. So literally some of the models based on the last 6 months of results in sales or revenue or expense, it'll actually try to go predict where it's going to go based on the last 3 years or whatever metric you give it. It's not just you analyzing it. Pre-built connectors to popular ERP and CRM systems. If you're a Dynamics customer, they actually have that. If there's any questions on the ERP you use, just reach out to your client success manager. And it's all also built on SQL services and has the capability to handle some very large transaction volumes if your company requires it, using some of the analysis services cube technologies. So with that, I will take a stop here, and I'll turn it over to Judson for a demonstration of one of the CPM solutions.
Thanks, Terry. And let me share my screen. And Lindsay, could you let me know when it's showing?
Yep, you're good.
Cool, thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. As Terry mentioned, I'm going to be showing Adaptive Insights today, which is just one of the three solutions that we offer. Really just want to kind of give you a flavor for the possibilities that some of these solutions can provide for your organization. And really just kind of keep in mind, this is going to be a 10,000 foot overview. We could get very detailed in some aspects, but we're going to keep it pretty general. Again, just kind of want to give you a flavor for what some of these solutions are. So you'll notice that I am actually just in a Google Chrome browser here. Adaptive Insights is a 100% based cloud solution. Has always been built in the cloud. So as a lot of you are probably familiar with the cloud, some of the benefits of that, right? It's you don't have to manage the actual servers yourself. Very quick uptime. So if you were to get an instance of Adaptive Insights, essentially you your login, everything is set up for you, as well as it can be accessed from anywhere with an internet connection, any browser that you want to use. You're able to access your information from anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. And I'm logging in as an administrator user. So I'm going to have access to the entire system, as well as I'll be able to essentially do anything in the whole system. Some of your end users that would be logging into a system like this, they would have restricted access not only to the data, but to some of the tasks and the functions that they could do within the actual system. The first page that you're going to see here is what's called the process tracker. And really what this is just from an administrative point of view, being able to track where you're at in different financial processes within your organization. So I'll point out, I'm looking at the budget process here. I could have multiple processes, whether it's a quarterly forecast or maybe building a marketing plan, different close processes. What this is going to do is it's just going to give you an overview of where your organization is at, right? So I can see that within my budget process, 8. So 2 tasks completed, and I have 9 running. Tasks can be assigned to specific users. So you'll see this finalize CAPEX spin task I have assigned to my CFO. I could add a description in here to describe what needed to be done for the task. Maybe if there's certain attachments that need to be added to complete that, I could add those here. A note to collaborate between maybe it's an approver of this task or a reviewer, being able to share information just right here within the task and kind of drive that collaboration throughout your organization. But really, it's just an overall view, a way to kind of figure out in the budget process. Excel would not necessarily give you if someone is coming to say, where are we at in the budget process, right? This can be tied to workflow. So what workflow does, it really works hand in hand with the process tracker. So I'll go through and I can see within different parts of my organization here, as I kind of go through this hierarchy, maybe which department has approved their budget for review. So I can see my Sales East organization here has submitted their budget for review. Who was allowed and was it updated? I can see that my Sales West and my West Services, their budget has been approved for the year. And so that budget is actually now going to be locked down, so no one can go in and make changes to it, while my Sales North budget has been rejected. So someone's going to need to go back in there, make the changes that I've requested them to make, and they'll be able to go in and resubmit that for review, so a approver can go back in and review it. So I'm going to navigate here to the 3 bars drop down, and again, you'll see that there's a lot of options here that I can choose from. I've got my sheets, some assumptions maybe that are driving my budgets, reports, discovery. Both of these 2 options here are what Adaptive refers to as their dashboarding solution. They just refer to it as discovery, consolidations. We just mentioned the process tracker, managing any formulas within my budget, and then some of the administrator functions down here. We're going to go ahead and take a look at some sheets. One thing I'll point out, you'll notice I have a variety of sheets here, and we'll take a look at a good bit of them. But anything from a P&L and a balance sheet down into my personnel planning sheet here. If I keep going down, we'll see I have a sheet that's housing CRM data and a sheet that's housing my inventory. There's a handful of sheets within Adaptive that can be created. They're all customized to your business. They all can be customized to the user in terms of the data that they see and the level of access they have. So we'll jump into one of the first sheets as an example, and we're just going to look at this office expenses with a trend line sheet. And just wanted to point out a few things. You'll notice will kind of follow us through the system, and that's these two drop downs right here. So this first drop down is what's referred to as our version selector, and you can think of this really as just it's different sets of data. So the versions being here, you can see we have our actuals version, and then we have a handful of budget versions or planned versions. So you can see here that my budget pass one is actually locked down. While as maybe I have a working budget that's not locked down that I'm actually able to go in and edit. I can drill into my actuals here. We'll work with this here for a second. And while that rendered, I just want to point out the second one as well. And this is our level selector. So what this is, I'll go ahead and collapse these. You can see this is just for this particular example, this is our company hierarchy that we've built out. And so you can see the top level here is our total company. It's a consolidated view. And this is made up of company A, B, and C. I can even actually add in, maybe I add in this company X here, which is actually a proposed acquisition. And I could build this then to maybe look at a particular what if scenario if we were to add in this entire company. But as I scroll down, I can, or as I expand into this, you can see the hierarchy that I've built out. Just as an example, of course, this would all be customized to your organization, what you needed to see. But as I go down, I get into eventually the United States, and I can get even to into a region level. So with that, that's really the way that the level selector there is really the way that Adaptive kind of layers your data, as well as how it controls your information, right? So I'm looking at my actuals version for Sales North. As an administrator, I have access to all those levels, so I'd be able to see any data that I needed to see. Whereas your Sales North manager, when he came in here and logged into the system and wanted to click the level selector here, he would actually only have access to Sales North because that's the only information he can see. And that's all controlled based off what you give them access to. I'm going to jump into the total company here and just kind of give you, show you a couple of the different features that you can see here on a sheet. Just to point out, a sheet is important to keep in mind is really a way to just see the data that is stored in the cloud. It's where information can be entered and data can be manipulated, but it's not necessarily a report or a dashboard, right? Those are really the ways that you would want certain end users and certain executives to view the data in a very finalized format. This is going to be much more where you can manipulate data and kind of just see a rough estimate of what some of these values are and where they're stored. A few features to point out within these sheets is the ability to go into Cell Explorer. So if I click or the cell, you'll see that I'm going to get a lot more detail into this particular cell. So I've got some options here in terms of being able to view an audit trail. So Has this number been changed? When was it changed? Depending on your ERP system, you can actually jump right into your ERP system or actually get into the transactions. I can see here at a very high level what's actually making up this $10,000 number. You can see the currency that value is actually stored in, right? So you can see that my company A and company B are actually, maybe I'm an international organization. The values stored there are actually going to be different currencies, but I can actually drill through. So if I wanted to see what was making up this number, I can go into company A and I can see that 8,500 of this is coming from operations, while 1,700 is coming from corporate. And I can continue to drill all the way through down into the most granular level that I wanted to see. So if I go back into that sales north, eventually I'm going to reach the very end, and I can see for this 6,300 maintenance account, after drilling through into sales north, there's 1,700 of that that's making up that value. And then if I wanted to, I can go even further and I can just drill directly into my transactions. And then I now have a transaction report that show me the transactions that are making up that $1,700 value. Again, that's just one way to Adaptive kind of is as Terry mentioned earlier, a single source of the truth. We're holding personnel data, CRM data, which we can take a look at. But you're actually able to build, and you're actually able to do this with BI 360 and Facto as well, but build integrations into additional source systems. So you're actually able to set up those integrations to run, say, on a schedule. They run nightly. So when you come and you log into your system in the morning, whether you're at the office or whether you're at home, if it is a cloud-based solution, you're going to know that your data is always up to date. And it really provides you that single source of the truth. So you're not having to jump from your ERP system, say it's Dynamics GP. You're not having to go look into an operational system. You're not having to send an email to someone that has access to the personnel system because you're looking to see what's making up some of your numbers. It houses it all in one system for you. Let's take a look at one of our budget versions and just kind of give you an idea of how some of this information would work in terms of a budget. And I'm going to jump down into that more granular level we were looking at, that sales north level. So I'll just navigate there through my level selector. And one thing I'll point out with this is a couple of things that you might notice. So if I look at my equipment rental line here, my 6320 account, you can notice that these cells are actually grayed out. So you'll notice the window that pops up there saying that this account has been locked on this sheet. I can actually control what lines should be locked down and which lines should be editable on this actual sheet. A couple other items to point out that you might actually notice right offhand, some of these different arrows that are appearing in the corners of the cell. So this particular example right here, if I mouse over this red arrow that's appearing in the top right corner, you can actually see that I'm actually able to add a note right in here. So this was a one-time building upgrade, and I can see the vendor quote attachment that's actually stored in the system as well if I wanted to go in and actually look at the vendor quote. So just an example there of being able to add in a cell note. You'll notice the purple arrow here in the bottom right-hand corner, and this is actually signifying that this number is actually coming from a formula that's being calculated in another sheet. So what this is doing, and I'll point out here in the formula bar, Adaptive specifically uses a more named-based formula convention as opposed to what Excel might use, which would be more location-based, right? So whether it's A2 plus B5, right, would just be an example of that. But what this is supposed to do, it's supposed to give you a little bit more insight to quickly see what's driving that number, as opposed to having to kind of go through and search through different tabs to see what's happening. So what this is telling me is that this number is being driven from my FTE count that's coming from my personnel sheet, And all it's doing is it's just multiplying by an assumption, which is a per head assumption that I've already generated. Maybe that's based off my actuals information that's being stored in the system. I'm using that as a driver to see what my historical telephone cost per head is, right? And you can actually see here, I've just added in a note to this formula to tell me what's driving this, right? It's the telephone cost driven by the FTE. If I right click, I still have the ability to explore the cell, right? So it's actually going to show me, not only will it show me the formula, but it's actually going to evaluate that for me and show me exactly how it's getting this. So for my Sales North organization, my FTE for March 2018 is 4.7. And then what's the assumption for March of 2018? It's $40 per head. So that's how I'm getting that 188 value. Few other options I can point out. This is just being driven by an actual number, right? So let's say some people will actually just budget by saying, okay, maybe for legal and professional, I know for my fiscal year 2018, I want to budget by $25,000. So I can just come in here. I'm actually on the whole fiscal year 2018. Let's type in 25,000. And as I hit enter, you'll notice this window is going to pop up. And it's asking me how I want to break back that 25,000 across my months. So I could just break it back proportionally across my months. Maybe I want to break it back proportionally using a prior year. Maybe I just want to break it back evenly. There's some common spread methods here, 445, 454. Maybe I have a custom assumption that I actually have built in that's specific to my business. So if I click that, you'll notice I now have a drop down that I could break this number back by the business days in the month, revenue, expenses, just two examples here. These are all custom to what you put in. Very easy to do. You can add in an assumption, just make it part of a break back, and I could break it back that way if I wanted. So I'll just select one of these and go ahead and apply it. And you'll notice that it's actually popped up in a blue text. All that's signifying is that this number actually hasn't been saved. It hasn't been committed to the cloud. So I have two options here. If I realize that that's actually not what I wanted to do, I could just clear all my edits here. But let's go ahead and assume that that's what I wanted to do. So I'm going to save it. And it will just commit that number right into the cloud for me. That audit trail feature I showed you, if I go back into Explore Cell, I can now go into View the Audit Trail. And I can see now all the changes that were actually made from that number, starting actually all the way back in April 9th. You can tell this is my demo environment as I make these changes, right? So I've been making, I'm the financial analyst, I've been making all these changes, but I can actually see all the way back from in April 9th of 2017, that value started as 1,050, and now I can see what it currently is, which is, if I look at the latest change, it's now 2,083. So really a full audit trail within your information. And you'll notice it's only keeping track of this for my working budget, right? If I wanted to change any version, I actually would maintain the audit trail for all my different versions so I could keep track of that information. So that's a pretty detailed overview, pretty quick overview actually, I guess, of the standard sheet. And we can go in and look at a few more examples of some of the different sheets. I know I had mentioned that we have a sheet here showing CRM data. So maybe you're using D365, maybe you're using Salesforce. As I had mentioned, Adaptive is data agnostic, so we can connect to all those sources and bring in that information. So similar to the personnel sheet, that formula that I just showed you, maybe your revenue is being driven based off the information in Salesforce. So this is a little bit different view of a sheet. This is what Adaptive actually refers to as a modeled sheet. And you'll notice I've got my columns going across. I've got multiple rows of information. So I've got my account name, the location, what the opportunity might be, the product they would be interested in, what stage they're at in the process, some different information related to those opportunities, right? And this is just very simply showing the opportunity amount, what's the probability of close, and it's giving me a forecast number here. So maybe I'm using this and I'm linking it into my, just as an example, the P&L sheet, and that's how I'm able to drive my revenue. So instead of going in and actually manually typing in a number, the integration is going out and looking at Salesforce, bringing in that information for me, and it's just going to automatically calculate what would be a possible revenue number each time that integration runs. And again, I could have multiple versions of that information. So once a budget has been approved for the year, it's been locked down, I could quickly just copy over that information into another version, have an integration run, and it essentially would be reforecasting, whether you wanted to reforecast weekly, monthly, whatever it might be, but you're always getting a new kind of constantly revolving look into possibly what your revenue might be, right? Just one example of this. I can show you a few other examples of sheets. Let's see, let's take a look at the product revenue. And this is a little bit different. This is what Adaptive calls a cube sheet. You can really kind of think of this as almost a pivot table almost. So you'll notice I still have my version selector here, but my level selector has actually moved itself. So it's right here. I'm still in my Sales North organization. And now I've added in a few additional dimensions. So those dimensions being my customer, maybe it's a particular product I'm looking at. And within that product, maybe there's a few different sizes or colors that I want to look at. And you'll notice on this sheet, everything is locked down. Everything has a purple triangle in it, right? So these are all calculated accounts. So based off my units and my discount percentage, which these are the only two cells that I've allowed to be edited on this sheet, it will actually just go through and make all these calculations for me. So whether it's cost of sales that I'm calculating, whether it's my revenue, the discounts, net revenue, right? It'll all calculate based off these different assumptions I make. And it's how I can quickly maintain the structure. I can build this sheet out, and then just by selecting different versions, I'm able to change, say, a unit and see that information roll through the entire model. So if I came in here, and I've actually done this already, it's very simple to do. It takes about a minute to take all this data and copy it into a new version. So let's say I have a what if version. Actually, I know what I'm going to do. I'll show you how this works in personnel and how it'll actually roll through. I think that'll be a better example. So let's jump into personnel sheet. This is another modeled sheet, very similar to what we saw with the CRM data, with the rows housing each record, and we've got different columns going across the top. You'll notice our columns have changed, and that's just because it's changed for the sheet. It's all based off what you want to see. It's all customized. Again, you'll see that we're actually looking at the Sales North. So this is just personnel for Sales North. A few things that I can point out here on this sheet. I'm able to upload this information. I think I had mentioned that from our HR system. I could set up an integration to pull this in on a schedule, whether it's monthly, nightly, whatever it might be, as well as I can actually just manage it right here on the sheet, right? So some of these are actually, I can just type in here to these. Some of these are a drop down, and I can select different titles. Maybe I'm selecting the state that this particular person is living in for a state tax calculation. Hours per week, I could select a health benefits plan that will drive my benefits costs, et cetera, et cetera. These are all customized to what you want to see: bonuses, commission targets. You'll even notice here William Clark. This is actually, if you notice right here in this level selector, he's actually, this is a way I could allocate his personnel expenses across different organizations. So you'll notice here for Sales South, he's actually allocated for the 2018 fiscal year 40% to Sales South and 60% to Sales North. So if he was, say maybe I knew William Clark was actually going to be making a change in April of 2018, I could actually allocate his expenses 100% through the first 4 months of the year and then allocated 100% across from sales north, right? A lot of different options I could do here. But what I do want to show you is I'm going to change my version selector, and let's say we do a what if scenario. And you'll notice here I have my working budget what if. And this is all I've done here. If I click in, you'll see I've got the same structure that I just showed you on the personnel sheet. All my data is the same. You'll see here's William Clark, right? Let's say I wanted to see if I wanted to hire a new CEO, what that would do in terms of affecting my P&L. So let's just manually add a row in here. And I'm going to add myself. And that's right, I'm going to make myself the CEO. Select the residence for tax purposes. We'll say I'm in New York. Let's add in a comment. This could be a prospective CEO hire. What's my start date? Let's say I'm going to be starting a little bit further back. Just for an example, hours per week, right? I can continue to go through, make these selections, health benefit plans. It's all going to drive the information that's hitting my P&L based off these selections, right? Whether it's a table I've set up to drive my health benefits plans, the cost for those, allocating my expenses, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, I do need to do this though. I do need to put in my salary. So it's the pay rate column here, and let's say I'm a pretty expensive CEO, $1 million, and we'll save that. So again, I'm on my what if scenario, right? Just kind of put in a prospective new CEO hire. So let's see how that's going to roll through and kind of affect my model, just as an example. And to show that, I'm going to jump back into a standard sheet. And I could do this on a report as well if I wanted. So I might just go ahead and open up a new report tab up here. So I've saved my personnel sheet. I'm going to jump over into my P&L. And again, I can point out right now, this is just showing kind of a P&L type version where I've got some product revenue. This is coming from that sheet I showed you earlier, the cube sheet, the product sales cube sheet here. And if I keep going down, you'll see here's my salaries and wages account. So just to point out here, I made myself start in May of 2017. So hopefully you'll notice here, it's kind of a jump up right here in May. It might be hard to see these numbers depending on your monitor screen, but it's 29,000 January through April, and then back in May of 2017, you'll see it jumps up to 110,000. So I'm assuming that's going to be my $1 million prospective CEO hire, and I'll just point out, right, I am on my working budget what if up here. So let's take a look. Why is my salary jumping up? Let's say maybe I wasn't responsible for updating personnel, but that looks kind of off. So let's take a look. I can go back in and use that explore cell function. You'll see it's showing me that this account is actually made up of a salary it's a salary account, that's on our personnel sheet. Just the naming convention here for the formula. Here's my 110,000. Let's drill in and take a look. And this is, of course, assuming, which my user does, it has access to view personnel information. So now I can actually see where this information is coming from. I can see that it's coming from my personnel planning sheet right here. And I actually can see each individual employee for the month and how that information, what's making up that 110,000. And let's say, I can see that there I am, $80,000 based on my salary. Let's jump in and explore this information. I can see some of the benefit plans I selected, my title that I've added, just additional level of information there. But let's say that's a pretty expensive CEO. I don't think we really should be doing that. So I can just jump right into my personnel planning sheet. And actually, let me point this out. Before I delete myself, I can show you this as well in more of a report view. So this is a predetermined report that I've actually created, and I've set it up where I can have different variables that I can just quickly select, and it will change what I'm viewing. And I've actually made this version here, so I'll select my working budget what if, and I'll run it. This will just be kind of a quick way that I can show what changes I've made. I've added some conditional formatting here, so I can see really quickly within these two budgets what's changed. So you'll notice as I copy over all the data, my product revenue is going to stay the same. What else is stay the same? My training, my equipment, rental, any of that information that I haven't changed, it didn't change, right? But you'll notice my payroll, taxes and benefits, those numbers are off. So let's drill in, take a closer look, and you'll see my salaries and wages account here. It has actually jumped up. And I'm assuming that change is going to be based off of that new prospective CEO salary that I've added. So let's go in. I'm going to jump back into that personnel planning sheet that I had pulled in from Cell Explorer. There I am. I'm going to click this delete row button here. It's going to ask me if I want to delete it. I do. And I'm going to save this information. And let's close this sheet. I'll jump back into my report tab here, and let's just refresh the report. And now I can see my conditional formatting has updated, right? If I go in and look at my payroll account, my salaries and wages is back to the same exact number that they were, just because I copied over all that information and I deleted that prospective CEO. So hopefully it just kind of shows you a really quick way of being able to quickly kind of do a what if scenario in terms of setting up the structure, having your budget model totally set up, but changing a few inputs, a few drivers, adding in a few prospective hires, whatever it might be, and really quickly being able to see variances and how that's going to affect your P&L, balance sheet, whatever it might be going forward in the future. And I can just show you here as well, back on this, if I refresh, this number will go back to normal on my sheet as well. Just a quick example. So reports, this HTML report writer, which is in the system, is just one way of being able to view your information. I will point out as I am an administrator, so I can see a consolidated point of view. What I do really like about this online report writer is, say I had mentioned earlier, if you're your sales north manager and I log in the system, unless I've made the report a consolidated report that everyone can see, the data security is actually going to essentially filter this report for me. So if this is a P&L version variance report and that sales north manager logs in that only has access to that level, the system will recognize that, and all of this information they see, product revenue, all of the expenses, it'll filter just for their organization only. So it's a really quick way, instead of, for some of you that maybe are used to building reports and management reporter, instead of having to build individual reports each time for each view that you want to see, you're actually able to build one report with one structure, and the security will actually handle everything for you and will allow you to see only the information that you need to see. So that's just one way to view your data. This HTML report writer is very flexible in this sense here. If I can kind of just give you a quick flavor, looks like we got about 10 minutes left. And real quick, Lindsay, do we have any questions right now?
We do not.
Okay, then. So just to kind of give you a quick overview of how easy it is to build some of these reports, you'll notice this is really all it is. It's on this whole P&L report. So what I've done is I've just gone into my accounts, and everything is drag and drop. There is no coding required. So if I want to pull in, which I've already pulled in my revenue here. So let's say I wanted to look at some expenses. I can expand my expenses. I built out a hierarchy with these, so I'll expand my operating expenses, and I can see, there's even a further hierarchy. Maybe I just wanted to look at my payroll. I could just drag that in individually. Maybe I wanted to look at for taxes and benefits, maybe on this report, I only wanted to see my 6210 account. I didn't want to see the whole taxes and benefits line, right? I could drag that in. Or maybe I wanted to see all my operating expenses. I could actually collapse everything down to this operating expense level. Could come in, I can drag in that whole line. I can right click here, I can manage the hierarchy. So you'll notice the hierarchy is going to pull itself in. However I make it appear here, it will end up appearing on this report. So just to kind of give you a quick idea of what I mean by that. So if I expand 6200 and let's say I expand the marketing operating expense tab here, and I'm going to apply this, and I'll just run the report again. So I'm going to end up duplicating some of my information here, but if I scroll down to the bottom below net income, you'll notice that here in the operating expenses, my taxes and benefits and my marketing expenses will automatically open, expanded, and then of course, you know, I've enabled on this report to collapse and expand any of these line items that I need to. So hopefully that's just kind of gives you a quick idea of everything in this is drag and drop. There's no querying involved. Really supposed to enable, with Adaptive specifically, I know their story is kind of that it was created by finance users for finance users. So it really is supposed to enable finance, accounting departments to go in and enable their users to come in and build these reports themselves, do any sort of ad hoc analysis they might need to see without the need to go to IT and have them kind of, you know, query your information or go to your consulting company and have to pay time for having them building reports for you. Just a quick example of that. So the report writer is one way to view reports. We can take a look at Discovery as well. I'll jump into Discovery Classic. I'm going to get a little pop-up here telling me that they have updated their user interface, which I can show that in a second as well, because they have really made it very easy to build dashboards. I'm just going to change my time here so I can get a little bit better data. I just want to kind of give you a flavor for what some of these dashboards look like. Everything on this is actually able to be drilled into. And I can show that off in a second, but you can see there's a wide variety of dials, charts that I can build based off this information. So maybe I've got some KPIs here that I'm wanting to look at, my revenue, EBITDA numbers, even an actual operational information in terms of my production. Maybe this is coming from my CRM sheet, you know, a 45,000 average win size, gross margin. Here's a quick scorecard, some graphs, pie chart here. This is just a summary view that I'm looking at, right? I have a tab here for my production information. I have a tab here for my CRM information. I have a map here that's actually even showing me my sales history based off where it's actually happening in each state. If I jump back into the summary, just to kind of show you, if I want to look at my revenue number, I had mentioned that these can all be drilled into. So if I click into this revenue number, I've got my Explore data, which is actually the Cell Explorer that we've seen a couple times. But let's say I wanted to see what this revenue number was for a customer. You'll see it's actually going to create a new form. I can now see what's making up that $4.2 million by my customer. See, I wanted to look at what my top customer is, which is customer 5 here. And let's say I wanted to see a little bit more information. Up a new chart for me here. And I can see that they're actually buying a lot of product A1. So with product A1, you know, maybe I wanted to see what color they were buying or what size they were buying a lot of. Maybe I wanted to see what location that they were buying that product from so I could expand my level. And I can see that they're buying it all from company A. So just kind of give you an idea, there's no querying involved in this either, or there's no coding involved when you build these. The data is all layered upon itself. So if I go in and I build this revenue dashboard or this revenue chart, those drill throughs that just happen, they're all layered in automatically. There's no coding required. Nothing required to build that out. We're getting close to wrap up time, so I think I'm going to go ahead and stop there, Terry. And I know you had a couple things you wanted to share, so thanks for your time, everyone.
Thanks, Judson. Appreciate kind of going through some of the key areas of the solution. Lindsay, are you able to see my screen here?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, so one item I mentioned earlier was forecasting. With some of these tools, you'll now have the ability not just to accumulate your annual budget, but have unlimited versions and be able the ability to do reforecasts much easier throughout the year. Kind of an interesting statistic from Beyond Budgeting Roundtable group: 64% of annual budgets and targets are obsolete in 4 to 6 months. I won't ask for a show of hands here, but if you're nodding your head, that's happened to you before. You're not alone. So next steps, if you're looking to understand a little bit more about some of these solutions, what we're able to do is do a quick evaluation meeting. It takes about 30 to 45 minutes. Happy to sit down and just kind of understand at a very high level what you're doing today, and kind of at that point you in the right direction, and as well as give you ideas of what some of these solutions cost, just so you can look and say, does it make sense to pursue, or other solutions beyond. There's 3 other CPM solutions we work with as well, so we just want to make sure we're aware that there are options out there. Our contact information, you can always contact us at cpm@socius1.com, and you'll see Judson and my email at the end. Don't hesitate to follow up with us and for next steps, but definitely reach out to us, and then we can direct you possibly to 1 or 2 of the solutions that make the best sense. So with that, Lindsay, I'll turn it over to you.
Alrighty, before we get to questions, just reminding that you can put them in the question box, and some upcoming webinars and events. On Tuesday, December 5th from 1 to 2, we are going to have planning for your Microsoft Dynamics GP year-end, payroll specific, and then on Wednesday, December 6th from 1 to 2, we're going to have planning for your Microsoft Dynamics GP year-end, just kind of tips, tricks, and just a refresher. And then as always, you can find our events on our website, and then stay tuned. Our 2018 GP webinar series will be there before you know it. So with that, we will get to questions. The first one that we have, is Adaptive Insights positioned to be a total solution for budgeting, forecasting, financials, reporting, and dashboarding?
Sorry, I missed the beginning of the question. What was the?
Is Adaptive positioned to be a total solution for budgeting, forecasting, financials?
Yep, absolutely. It's covers in all 3 of the solutions. Literally can go from all of those different areas across your business process.
Awesome. And so far, there's only one. Again, if you have questions, you can email Terry or Judson. Their contact information is on the screen. But we'll stay on for another minute or so in case you guys have some. But if not, thanks everyone for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.